The big question that we're looking at is, what is a Christian? And I just want to be really open and just honest with you. I know when we do these Devos and it's like, oh, I don't want it just to be something. I want to talk to you. I want to talk from my heart and just something that we're looking at. It's like, man, it's not just about being a Christian, but what does it mean? It means to be Christ-like. It sounds very cliche. So whenever I look at the verse that we're looking at today, and it is John 19, it's very challenging to me as I look at it and what it means to be Christ-like. I'm really challenged because here it is the crucifixion of Jesus that we're looking at. Chapter 19 in John, verse 25 and 27. And it says this, "But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, 'Woman, behold your son.' Then he said to his disciple, 'Behold your mother.' And from that hour the disciple took her to his own home." That to me it makes sense. It seems that Jesus is being loving and caring. It just seems like it makes sense. But I want to be honest with you. When I look at that and I think about it, I'm like, but that's not the whole story. That's not just who Jesus paid attention to. Is if you go in and you look in the other Gospels and you look in Luke, there's a story is that when Jesus was crucified, we know that there was a thief and a criminals, that they were on both sides of Jesus. And one of the criminals said, "Hey, if you're the Christ," he says, "why don't you rescue yourself and us?" And then the other disciple kind of rebuked him and said, hey, we're getting justly what we deserve. He says, but man, he's done nothing wrong. And he said to Jesus, he said, "Remember me when you go into your kingdom." And Jesus says, "Hey, today you will be in paradise. Today you'll be in heaven with me." And he brought salvation to that criminal in that moment. And so he saw this criminal in that moment. And it was like, he didn't just ignore him. Even in his own pain and his own suffering and fulfilling his purpose, he saw others, not just his family. That was his mother and those that were so close to him, the beloved. But then it even goes beyond that. It talks about that when Jesus was crucified in Luke 23, whenever the soldiers crucified him, he'd already been beat, he'd already been ridiculed, and everybody was condemning him, and he hadn't done anything wrong. And it said that they crucified him, and Jesus' words were this. As he looked over all of the rulers and all of the religious people, and then as the soldiers who had crucified him, he said this. He said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Y'all, man, that is challenging because it's easy to love the lovable, but what about the unlovable? About the criminals that were on there? That's a challenge to me. Is like, how do I love the unlovable? How do I love those that it seems like what they're receiving, their just reward is the penalty and the consequences of their sins. They deserve it, but yet it's like Jesus found salvation in the midst of that. How does that challenge me? How does that challenge you? But then also being wrongfully accused and being a victim and being treated unfair. What was the heart of Jesus? Man, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." Man, that's the challenge to me in this verse, in the heart of Jesus. Whenever Jesus, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and we've talked about that some, is that he said, "Man, Father, if there's any other way for this cup to pass, let it be done." But Jesus' love drove him to the cross. And that is the love that we all should have. When I think about the Garden of Gethsemane, it makes me think of my niece. And my niece, actually, she had passed away in a tragic accident in 2015. But in November of 2014, she was at the Garden of Gethsemane. And she wrote a journal entry that has totally impacted hundreds, if not thousands of people across the United States and across the world. After her celebration of life, actually my son and my daughter, and then some of her friends, my niece's name is Jamelin, is that they all went and got nowadays is that they get a tattoo. And they got a memorial tattoo about Jamelin. And what they did is they took words from Jamelin's journal entry that she wrote in Gethsemane. And I thought of these words when we were in Gethsemane 2 years ago when we went to Israel. It was very a sentimental moment, but we thought about this. And is that these words that Jamie wrote about saying yes to Jesus. All those young people got a tattoo that said yes. And the word yes means a lot, and it was the heart of Jamie. But these were the words of Jamie, and I want you to listen to them as we close.
I spent almost 2 weeks in Israel walking places where Jesus walked and getting my eyes on places I had only read about in my Bible. One of my favorite places was Gethsemane. This place looked completely different than I had envisioned it in my mind. Yet it is the place where my Lord said yes to the largest and most unimaginable task. It's the place where he wrestled with his humanness, but ultimately chose us. It's where he chose me. His yes on this Mount of Olives changed history. His yes made a way for me to be new. His yes washed away my crimson stains. His yes broke any bondage that would ever try to overtake me. His yes places me in the presence of a prodigal father. His yes forever changes my identity. His yes gave me life. His yes overwhelms me. It demands a response. I still wrestle with my humanness, but praise God that with his strength, I now have the freedom to say yes.
Yes has never meant the same to me since that time of Jamie's passing. And when I see it, and actually if you see Kim in her car and us driving her car, is that we have a license plate that says we say yes. And that's what it means, is that we say yes. And Jamelin's journal entry goes on, and the next sentence says this: my assignments in this life might change from season to season, but my calling will always be to say yes, no matter what he asks. What does it mean to be Christ-like? Is when Jesus was at Gethsemane, he said, Father, if there be any other way, let this cup pass. Let it be where I don't have to go to the cross. But God said that this is the way of redemption and salvation for all people. And Jesus said yes. And Jamelin, that's what she was saying. He said, whatever you ask of me, I will say yes. And Jamelin had a heart for people. And Jamelin was an example. So when we talk about what is a Christian, I'm talking about my niece because she was a great example. And Jamelin, actually, if you come in my office, there's a board that I had engraved with a quote from her. And it says this: people don't go to heaven, or things don't go to heaven, but people go to heaven. So that's what I'll spend the rest of my life on. You know, that's a challenge for me and you both, is what do we do with our life and what do we say yes to? So I want to just challenge you. What do you say yes to? Have you said yes to Jesus? And what does that mean? When we say yes to love, not just our family, not just those who are lovable, but to those who are unlovable and those that victimize us and who treat us wrong. To me, that's what it kind of means to be Christ-like. I hope it's challenging to you, and I hope it's encouraging to you. God bless. We'll see you next time.